In the world of video games, some companies become legends. Their names are everywhere. But others were absolute titans, giants of their time, and now they're just gone. Today we're telling the story of one of those fallen empires, ELF Corporation. This was a company that basically defined a genre in Japan, only to completely fall apart in a way that honestly still feels shocking. So let's get into it.
Okay, so take a look at these two games right here. On one side, you've got Dokusei 2, a super famous, kinda wholesome romance game that was a huge deal for a whole generation. And on the other side, Yakin Byoto, a game that's, well, let's just say it's infamous for being incredibly dark. They look like they're from different universes, right? But believe it or not, there's a direct line connecting them, and that connection is the key to understanding the entire story of ELF.
And to figure out that puzzle, we have to do something a little weird. We're going to start at the end, with ELF's bankruptcy, because the thread that ties these two completely different games together was actually pulled way before the company even hit its peak. It all started when one very important person decided to walk out the door.
And there it is. That's the link. Back in 1993, a key artist at ELF, a guy named Abiru Toshiyuki, just up and left. He started his own company, Mink, which would eventually go on to make Yakin Byoto. So yeah, the creative DNA for these two rival games literally came from the same studio. And that departure? It was the first little tremor before a massive earthquake hit the company.
But okay, before we get to the fall, you have to understand the incredible rise. Let's jump back to the mid-90s. This is when ELF was an absolute juggernaut. They were at the top of their game, making tons of money, and they were about to completely change everything.
So, in 1995, ELF drops Dokusei 2. And look, this wasn't just another game. It was a cultural phenomenon. It absolutely perfected the romance sim genre. It had this amazing time-based system that made everything feel so urgent and real. And the story? It just connected with people. For a whole generation of gamers, this wasn't just a game, it was a defining part of growing up. And this timeline just shows you how wild things were back then. It's just bang, bang, bang. A key artist leaves in '93, but then 2 years later they have their biggest hit ever. Then the very next year they're expanding to consoles and releasing another all-time masterpiece. It was an absolutely insane period of success, but as you can imagine, an incredible amount of pressure too. And this right here really puts it all in perspective. ELF wasn't just some big fish in a small pond of PC gaming. No way. When they brought their games over to the Sega Saturn, titles like Eve Burst Error sold over 330,000 copies. To give you some context, that's almost as much as Grandia, a huge RPG with a massive marketing budget that was supposed to be a Final Fantasy killer. ELF was playing in the big leagues.
I mean, you've got to admire the ambition, right? They were not content to just stay in their lane. They jumped over to the Sega Saturn, and they even, somehow, managed to get a version of their biggest hit onto Nintendo's super family-friendly Super Famicom. They were literally tearing down the walls that separated niche PC games from the massive console market.
So, let's keep going. It's 1996. ELF is on top of the world. And right at this moment, the founder makes a decision. A single hire that would lead to the company's greatest work of art and, yeah, also plant the seeds for its complete and utter downfall.
The founder, Hirano Masato, brought in this creator named Kano Hiroyuki. And Kano was known as a total package, a true genius. He could write the story, do the design, handle the programming, the whole shebang. So Hirano basically gave him the keys to the kingdom. He got his own dedicated team and was told, "Go make your masterpiece, no limits."
And oh, did he ever. The game he created was You-Know. And it wasn't just a game. It was this sprawling, mind-bending epic. It wove together philosophy, history, and parallel universes into a story so ahead of its time that people today see it as a direct predecessor to modern classics like Steins Gate. It was that big of a deal. The really revolutionary part was its gameplay system called ADMS. So what you would do is you'd find these special jewels that let you set a save point in time. Then you could literally jump to a different parallel world, find a clue or an item you needed, and then jump back to your original spot to use what you just learned. It was a brilliant way of making the gameplay a core part of the time travel story. But this dream team just wasn't built to last. See, Hirano Masato, the founder, he was ELF. His personal creative style defined the entire company. But Kano's genius with You-Know was so huge, so undeniable, that his reputation inside the company just exploded. And the story goes that Hirano started to feel threatened, like his own position was at risk. The tension grew, and in the end, after making just one single game, one of the greatest of all time, Kano Hiroyuki was gone.
So with the genius creator out of the picture, ELF was back in the hands of its founder, Hirono Masato, and only him. And his creative work started to get darker, a little different. But that wasn't the biggest change. Just a few years later, he made a move that absolutely nobody saw coming.
In the summer of 2000, Hirono Masato, the man who built ELF from the ground up, the guy whose vision was the company, just walked away. He quit the company he founded. The king had officially left his own throne.
And without him, ELF was instantly adrift. It was described by people at the time as a dragon without a head. He was the one person who could keep all the different creative teams and egos in line. With him gone, the company just descended into chaos. We're talking years of infighting, creative stagnation. They had completely lost their way.
Okay, so fast forward 4 years. 4 years of the company just wandering in the dark. The headless dragon decides it's going to try and roar one more time. In 2004, ELF put all of its remaining hopes into a sequel for another one of its classic series. But what was supposed to be a triumphant comeback ended up being the final nail in the company's coffin, thanks to one catastrophic decision.
The game was called Kakuase 2, and in all the ads, on the website, everywhere, ELF made a very specific promise to its fans. They said this was a return to the good old days. It was going to be a story of pure love. That's what they sold to their loyal audience, who were desperately waiting for a comeback.
But that is not what the game was. Not even close. Players were furious. They'd start the game, and the main heroine, the girl you're supposed to fall for, already has another, richer boyfriend. And worse, she talks about him to you constantly. It was the exact opposite of pure love. It felt like a total betrayal of everything the fans loved about the company and a complete lie from the marketing department.
The fan backlash was so massive, so legendary, that it actually got its own name, the Gokyeon Jiken, which means the Goldfish Incident. It all came to a head when one fan famously recorded himself literally snapping his game disc in half, putting the pieces in an envelope and mailing it back to ELF, demanding his money back. At that point, it was over. The company's reputation was destroyed.
After the Goldfish incident, the end was slow, but it was inevitable. They just never recovered. They managed to release one last decent game in 2008, but by 2014, the game development team was completely gone. And then finally, in 2017, the once unstoppable ELF Corporation officially declared bankruptcy. The empire had fallen.
So when you look back at the whole story, it's just this incredible tragedy, you know? A story of clashing egos, terrible business decisions, and ultimately betraying the trust of your biggest fans. But it leaves you with this one big question. When a company is so completely built around the vision of one single person, can it ever really survive once they're gone? Or is it doomed to just become a dragon without a head, lost and just waiting for the end?